Teen Houdini Colton Moore has been on the run since he escaped 3 months ago from a group home on Camano Island.
Saturday morning, someone broke into a deputy's car, stealing a rifle, ammo, and a laptop.
This is Colton Harris Moore, a teenager pursued by the police and FBI since the age of 14. This boy stole homes, cars, and not just 1 or 2 aircraft, but an astounding 5 aircraft without holding a pilot's license or even knowing how to fly a plane in the first place. Colton committed over 67 crimes and felonies, including the theft of police weapons. He seemed to believe he was in a game, leaving law enforcement, the FBI, and police bewildered as they chased him from city to city, region to region, and even country to country. This story may sound unbelievable, but it's true, and you'll witness the insane events in this video.
Look at this, a remarkable landing.
Harris Moore even flew off in a stolen $600,000 plane before crash landing in a swamp in the Bahamas.
Today's story revolves around this teenager, Colton Harris Moore, who lived one of the craziest teenage lives in history. It's doubtful any other teenager has experienced madness like this. The journey began with Colton's difficult upbringing. Raised in a troubled home, his mother struggled with alcoholism, and his father was a drug addict. After their separation, Colton's father abandoned them, leaving the family in dire straits, and their living conditions were abysmal, a rundown trailer from the outside and inside. Colton and his mother resided on Camano Island, part of the state of Washington in the United States. Colton and his mother lived in one of the areas on this island. Aside from the hardships of poverty, Colton faced neglect due to his mother's alcohol addiction.
And your mom is willing to do this?
Of course.
For Colton, the only solution to secure food was theft. He would enter stores and supermarkets, stealing items, especially food and drinks. However, due to his lack of experience, he often got caught and spent a day or two in short-term juvenile detention centers that resembled schools more than actual prisons. Colton found himself entangled in numerous school issues. He was either suspended or expelled repeatedly. His mother, indifferent to the situation, remained unresponsive to the efforts of both the police and the school administration. At the tender age of 14, Colton persisted in these behaviors, gradually evolving into a home invader. He began learning how to pick locks or break them, along with discovering the hiding spots for spare keys. When breaking into homes, his routine included raiding the fridge for food and beverages before lounging on the couch to watch TV or play PlayStation. He often targeted vacant houses, those whose occupants were on vacation or away. The fact that many houses on the island were vacation homes, used only during holidays, worked to his advantage. Colton went beyond stealing. He made himself at home, sometimes even sleeping in these houses for nights, taking showers, changing clothes, and treating the place as if it were his own. Some houses even had cars, which he would borrow for joyrides. After depleting the fuel, he would fill the tank with gas and return the car in pristine condition. Before leaving a house, he would take anything valuable he could carry, occasionally breaking into safes for cash and gold.
He basically just walked into our store and started getting what he needed, and then he decided to break into our safe, which he did. And this is our remains of it, over $3,000 in our safe.
He also would take anything he could carry, like electronics, such as laptops and PlayStations, and frozen food. During this period, Colton stopped returning to his mother's house altogether. He lived independently, either breaking into homes or camping in the wilderness. His tent, however, had no fixed location and moved with him as he shifted from one area to another, stealing from homes and stores before returning to his makeshift home at the end of the day. One peculiar target during this time was a fire station. His objective was to steal thermal imaging cameras. Firefighters use these cameras during rescue operations to see through smoke and identify people behind burning walls. Colton successfully stole these cameras, enhancing his ability to carry out more secure thefts. The situation persisted for several months as Colton lived on his own in a tent amidst the forest, stealthily moving from one area to another on the island, robbing houses. Numerous police reports about these thefts started flooding in, and law enforcement had been actively working on the case for a while. They tirelessly pursued Colton until they determined his identity through their investigations and existing records. As mentioned earlier, he had been apprehended multiple times before, providing the police with his information, fingerprints, and even a photograph. With his disappearance from school and his mother's house, they quickly connected the dots, making him the prime suspect from the start. However, the challenge was finding him. Despite distributing his photos and declaring him wanted, he remained elusive. The island was not small. It contained various regions and towns, making it difficult to locate him. During this time, Colton continued to enhance his arsenal. He bought numerous items using stolen credit cards, acquiring tools and devices to aid his life in the wilderness, such as bear repellent spray and more. He ordered these items online, and they were delivered to the homes of the credit card owners. Imagine him stealing these items right from the doorsteps of people's houses. This audacious move would eventually lead to his downfall. In 2007, at the age of 15, during one of his home invasion operations, he decided to spend the night in a particular house. In a bold move, he turned on the lights inside. The neighbors, aware that the homeowners were away, became suspicious when they noticed the lights on. They promptly called the police, reporting the unusual activity. The police believed this could be Colton, the person they had been searching for. They surrounded the house, preventing any escape routes, and entered to find Colton comfortably asleep on the bed. He was arrested. This time, he wasn't taken to a juvenile detention center like before. He was sent to a juvenile prison. Due to his age of 15, he was sentenced to 4 years for 21 criminal charges. In prison, Colton remained calm and avoided trouble with other inmates. Additionally, he engaged in beneficial activities, reading books, drawing, and developing an interest in aviation and airplanes. Colton adhered to the prison's regulations and attended discussion sessions and lessons. He consistently showed a desire for self-improvement, expressing his intention to return to education and pursue university studies upon release. However, this was all an act. Unbeknownst to the supervisors, Colton's plan was to maintain good behavior temporarily to secure a transfer to a less secure prison or a juvenile detention center. In 10 months of maintaining good behavior, his goal was achieved. He was transferred to a detention center. Upon arrival, he immediately observed the guards' movements, analyzed the security routine of the facility, and began planning his escape. One night, he quietly gathered his belongings, opened a window, and escaped from the center. The facility had walls or fences around it, but Colton's fitness level allowed him to climb out through the window and descend safely. Once again, Colton Harris Moore was a free man. We've reached the year 2008, and Colton is now 17 years old. The only path ahead of him was to return to his former life. So, he resumed living in a tent in the heart of the forest, once again robbing houses, occasionally targeting shops, and even daring to steal from a small bank. Colton's exceptional physical fitness allowed him to climb, maneuver, and break into places. For instance, during one theft, he infiltrated a store selling tools and equipment. Entering through a second-floor window, he gathered the needed tools from the storage room. In the same room, there was a safe filled with money. Colton took an iron rod and relentlessly struck the safe until it yielded. Police continued their pursuit, but locating him proved challenging. However, during one of his burglaries, Colton stole a high-powered sports car, a Mercedes, from a house. Driving recklessly at speeds exceeding 150 miles per hour, he attracted police attention. A thrilling chase ensued, with Colton eventually outsmarting the pursuing officers. He veered off the road, crashing the stolen car into a tree, then swiftly disappeared into the nearby forest on foot. Despite ongoing thefts, Colton managed to stay ahead. In a surprising turn, he stole an automatic rifle from a police car, elevating the stakes. This marked a significant shift, as his previous thefts had been non-violent. Stealing a weapon of this caliber was a dangerous development. The local police intensified their search operations, deploying armed units with dogs and even helicopters. Yet, Colton continued to evade capture. The island's law enforcement faced a dilemma. Colton's elusive nature and audacious actions kept them on their toes. Even the FBI joined the investigation, offering a substantial reward of $10,000 for information leading to his arrest. Bounty hunters, too, joined the hunt for Colton. On the flip side, Colton was living in his own world, planning the unimaginable. Despite his criminal activities, he maintained a passion for aviation, sparked during his time in prison. After escaping, he purchased aviation manuals and a powerful laptop to play flight simulation games. Flight Simulator, a highly realistic game, became his training ground for flying. After acquiring the necessary knowledge, Colton started monitoring a local airport on the island. Exploiting opportunities, he occasionally sneaked into hangars, stealing operation manuals and evading capture. As his understanding of aviation deepened, He chose a suitable plane, breached the hangar, and took off. Colton soared through the skies, reveling in the breathtaking views as if living a dream. His bravery and audacity reached unprecedented levels. However, he overlooked one crucial detail: the fuel gauge. Realizing he was running out of fuel, panic set in. The descent, the most challenging and perilous phase of flight, loomed ahead. What would he do? Desperately searching for an open area to land, Colton attempted a descent but ended up crash landing, miraculously emerging unscathed. Despite sustaining minor injuries, he bravely continued on foot, leaving behind the wreckage of the stolen plane. When authorities received reports of the plane theft, they failed to consider Colton as a suspect, attributing it to drug cartels instead. The police search operations continued, sometimes getting close to him. Once they found his tent and raided it, but Colton sensed them, escaped before they arrived, and observed them from a distance. He witnessed them seizing his belongings, including aviation manuals. This made the police suspect that Colton might be the one who stole the airplane, especially since the models he read about resembled the stolen one. However, they considered it coincidental, as they couldn't fathom the possibility. Undeterred, Colton returned to the airport and stole another plane. This time, his destination was an island adjacent to his, part of Washington state. Surprisingly, he landed smoothly on the new island. There, he brazenly burglarized a supermarket, taking advantage of a forklift to extract money from an ATM. People were fascinated by him. Imagine, he gained admirers. They called him the Barefoot Bandit because in most surveillance footage he was barefoot. Consequently, he became known by this nickname. Fan pages were created for him on Facebook, with followers reaching tens of thousands. People talked about him on YouTube, and some even made songs and graffiti in his honor on the walls. The matter reached a point where they started printing t-shirts for him and selling them to such an extent. Despite his growing fame, Colton realized the intensified pursuit and decided to leave the island. In a bold move, he stole a boat, navigated to Canada, and crossed maritime borders without getting caught by the Coast Guard. After spending a week in Canada, he stole another boat, returned to the US, and resumed car thefts. His intelligent approach involved changing cars frequently and avoiding refueling at gas stations with surveillance cameras. Colton's car journey continued until he reached a local airport in Idaho. Once again, he stole an airplane and flew to Granite Falls, Washington. Unaware that the seemingly open area had tree stumps, he crash-landed violently. Miraculously, Colton survived without serious injuries. Law enforcement swiftly responded, involving the FBI and special forces. Helicopters scoured the area from above and checkpoints were established. Meanwhile, a family reported seeing a suspicious person near their home, leading the police to search the nearby forest. Colton, surprised by the police and their dogs, fled, leaving his belongings behind. The police recovered his bag containing nearly $20,000 in cash and a camera with selfies of Colton Harris Moore. Despite extensive searches, law enforcement couldn't apprehend him again. Incredibly, with all the pursuits and scrutiny, Colton stole another plane for the fourth time. This time, he aimed for Orcas Island, also part of Washington state. The landing was better, not entirely smooth, but without the plane crashing. After a few thefts, he abruptly stopped his movements for several months, presumably sensing the escalating pursuit and choosing to lay low. Colton didn't disappoint his fans for a long time. On San Juan Island, Washington, people were surprised to see his drawing of a large footprint at the port, with one of the boats missing. This was Colton's announcement that he was back, living his life like the hero of a TV show, presenting himself to his fans. After stealing a boat from the port, Colton went to another island called Lopez Island. There, he stole another boat and returned to Camano Island, his original island. The problem was that the islanders didn't like him, and many were ready even to kill him. They held meetings, discussed how to stop him, organized nightly patrols and search groups, all armed. Even airplane owners stood guard next to their planes at night. What's amusing is that Colton didn't give them any consideration. He wasn't planning to stay on the island. As soon as he arrived, he stole a car and left for another island. These islands were connected by roads. He left the island to explore cities in Washington. Once, he even wrote a message with $100 in an animal shelter. The message said, "I passed by, had some extra money, please use it for animal care." The message was signed by Colton Harris Moore, proudly stating Barefoot Bandit. He didn't care if they could trace him. It was like he was saying, "Come and catch me if you can." This time, Colton decided to expand and explore America. He moved from state to state, stealing a car each time. He used the car until it ran out of fuel, avoiding gas stations. It was a clever move. He infiltrated several airports in different states, searching for the right plane. Authorities had no clue about him as he traveled thousands of kilometers across America. Finally, after crossing 9 states, covering 2,000 miles and stealing 11 cars, he reached the airport and the plane he wanted in Bloomington, Indiana. He camped there among the trees, watching and waiting for the right moment. Being far from Washington, he didn't need to be cautious here, and no one was ready or expecting his plane to be stolen. When the moment came, he boarded the plane and started it. After it was ready for takeoff, Colton took to the runway and flew away. This would be Colton's last flight. The journey was longer, taking him to the south and specifically to the Bahamas. He had left America. As Colton approached the Bahamas, he landed on an open area that was sandy, providing a smooth landing. Even the plane was relatively undamaged. Colton immediately headed for the forests after leaving the plane. The police arrived, examined the plane, and identified it as American. They informed the American authorities, establishing communication. The Bahamian authorities were given information about Colton, confirming that he had reached the Bahamas, and the news spread through television and newspapers. Colton wasted no time and immediately resumed his thieving activities. He invaded a shop and a restaurant, stole cash, food, and necessities, and then retreated into the woods. He seemed to be enjoying his time, swimming in the sea and exploring beautiful places as if he were on vacation. Later, he stole a car and went to one of the main cities on the island. Observing the port for a while, he noticed one boat owner leaving the harbor after docking his boat. Colton followed him until the person reached his car, leaving the boat key in the car to enter a nearby restaurant. Colton swiftly entered the car, took the boat key, and headed to the port, escaping the scene. With this boat, he went to another island in the Bahamas. There, he found a place to rest and hide among the trees. Colton stayed on the island for about a week, hidden, trying not to be seen as his picture and name were now widely known. After getting tired of this situation, he decided to steal a boat again. Colton stole a boat from the port and roamed the sea for a while. Then he did something strange. It's unclear if the situation was affecting him mentally or if it was just another act of his usual audacity. He approached 2 guys standing on the port with the boat, showing off with the boat in front of them. He moved the boat closer and spoke to them, saying, "You know me? I am the Barefoot Bandit." One of the guys recognized him but pretended not to. Colton told him not to play dumb, to call the police and let them come. He wanted them to chase him. He wanted to have some fun with them. Imagine the audacity of this young man. The second guy, while his friend was talking to Colton, lifted his phone and called one of their friends who had a boat. This friend had a boat and wanted to come to catch Colton and claim the reward of $10,000 on him. Colton, seeing the guy making the call, told him, "Good. You are calling the police. Let them come. I want to have fun with them." Imagine the courage of this boy. And moments later, their friend, the boat owner, along with a group of their friends, arrived. They all got on their boat, and they started chasing Colton. They spotted Colton from a distance, standing on his boat, not moving, and he was looking at them with a smile, as if he was challenging them, almost saying, "Come on, chase me." As they approached him, he accelerated his boat, and they did the same, creating a sort of race between them. Colton seemed to be enjoying the challenge, while they were behind him chasing. Just in a moment, one of them pulled out a pistol and aimed at Colton. In response, Colton made a maneuver with his boat, creating a wave that splashed onto them. The boat owner, who was driving, had water in his eyes, lost control for a moment, and veered in another direction. Colton quickly drives away in the opposite direction. Colton headed towards a nearby port. This port was right behind a palace and had a guard. The guard was observing the events from a distance and was puzzled. He saw a boat chasing another boat. One of the boats had a lone guy, and the second boat had a group of people yelling at him, as if they were in a war chasing the lone guy's boat. The guard considered calling the police at that moment. However, he saw the lone guy's boat heading towards the port. Colton hit the boat in the port, jumped out of the boat, and ran. These are real moments captured by surveillance cameras as he continued running until he reached the dock of the port. There, the guard asked, "What's going on?" Colton, catching his breath, immediately said, "They're trying to kill me. They're trying to kill me."
He ran right into me, right here, and I said, "What's up?" They're trying to kill me.
After regaining his composure, he quickly surpassed the guard and entered the area between the grass and trees, running towards the house. The guard ran after him with a short distance between them, but in the end, Colton hid among the trees surrounding the house. The guard immediately called the police chief in the area. They had a connection, and he told him, "I think the guy from the news is here, hiding in the house I'm guarding. Come quickly and surround him." The police chief immediately informed all the police officers on duty, and even those off duty. Anyone who could move was instructed to do so immediately. The police arrived at the area and the port, surrounding it from all sides. Colton couldn't leave the area. There was no open space for him to escape. However, as we all know, Colton is never an easy catch. He moved between the shrubs, circled around the port from the other side, and swam to the boat. At that moment, many people, including boat and house owners, were standing on the dock. They all witnessed a boat moving silently, slowly, with its lights on. They were puzzled, wondering why this boat was moving. Suddenly, Colton accelerated to the maximum speed and moved away from the port. People there realized what had happened and quickly informed the police. However, the police boats were not there. Some individuals who were present in the port volunteered their boats to the police to catch Colton. The police got on these boats and started the chase, but Colton was ahead of them by a distance. However, in a matter of moments, he looked back to see how close they were. He hit a sandbank extending from the island, and his boat got stuck. Colton tried to lift his boat, but he couldn't, and the police reached him. In an unusual move, Colton pulled out his pistol, placed it on his head, and told the police that if they didn't back off, he would shoot himself. The police were telling him to drop the weapon, but Colton kept screaming, "I can't go back, I can't go back." At the same time, with his other hand, Colton was moving the boat's propeller, trying to get the boat out of the sand. Suddenly, he managed to lift the boat from the sand. But at that moment, the police opened fire, not aiming at him, but at the boat's engine. As soon as they started shooting, Colton put his hand on his head and took cover. Eventually, after ensuring that the boat couldn't move, the police ordered him to raise his hands. He complied, surrendered completely, and was finally arrested after 2.5 years since his prison escape. As soon as they arrested him and brought him back to the port, people gathered and filming began. Colton tried to hide his face, not wanting to be filmed. The Bahamian police did what the US police and even the special forces couldn't. Here, we witness the moments of Colton being transported by plane to the court in the Bahamas. Interestingly, after Bahamian authorities didn't charge him for any of the thefts and issues he caused for them, they fined him $300 for entering the country illegally. However, the real reason was that they wanted to hand him over to US authorities as quickly as possible to face all charges in America. After Colton was handed over to the United States, he was tried in the year 2010. His trial continued for several months. Of course, by then he had turned 19, so he was no longer considered a minor and would be tried like any other adult. The charges against him were numerous, with 65 charges across different states in the United States, Canada, and the Bahamas. The potential sentence he faced could have reached up to 30 years. Fortunately for Colton, he had one of the best lawyers in America by his side. This lawyer was known for taking on the toughest criminal cases. His name was John Henry Brown. Brown was renowned for defending criminals when there seemed to be no defense. Colton couldn't have asked for a better lawyer. John, instead of denying the charges against Colton, focused on mitigating the sentence. Colton, against expectations, admitted to all the charges, but at the same time, emphasized to the judge and the jury the hardships of his childhood and the environment he grew up in. He tried to make them feel the suffering Colton had experienced from a young age, even struggling to find enough food to eat. The judge genuinely sympathized with his situation. In the end, he was sentenced to only 7 years. Even these 7 years were not completed entirely in prison. After 5 years, he was released on parole. Colton was released from prison in 2016 at the age of 25. Astonishingly, he now works as an assistant in his lawyer's law firm. And here, we have reached the end of our story today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and until the next video, you can see this video, stay tuned for the next one. Ciao.